This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Anything discussed during this podcast does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all content is for general entertainment purposes only. Listeners should contact their attorney to obtain advice with respect to any particular legal matter. Listening to, contacting us, or any of the links or resources contained within this podcast and/or website does not create an attorney-client relationship. The views expressed during this podcast are those of the individual lawyers in their individual personal capacities only.
All the legal ladies, all the legal ladies, all the legal ladies, all the legal ladies.
Welcome to All the Legal Ladies. Unwind with us as we navigate the fascinating world of legal tales, precedents, and the occasional objection-worthy joke. Today, we are expanding a little outside of our comfort zone and trying a remote interview with Michele Locke. Would you go ahead and introduce yourself for us?
Well, good morning. My name, as you said, is Michele Locke. I've been practicing law now this is my 22nd year. I've had the fortunate luck opportunities to serve as an associate family court judge for 5 years, and then I've served as a municipal court judge in one way or another since about 2009 as well. I'm in private practice, exclusively practicing in family law in Austin, Texas, and I left the full-time bench really to come back because I miss cross-examination like nothing else. And so left the bench in El Paso and moved out to Central Texas and living the dream since then.
That is nice. Well, let us introduce ourselves so you'll know. Marsha Williams. I'm Kat McLernan.
I'm Alycia Stack.
Well, good morning, ladies.
Good morning. And it's funny that you said you miss cross-examination because I'm trying to get out of family law. It is draining.
That would be a word for it. I have a few other words for it, but draining is definitely one of them.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a judge and then going back into family law.
You know, and I've said this before, my entire life has kind of revolved around family law. My parents got divorced when I was in second grade. I'll never forget the Friday that I came home. My mom told us that Dad wasn't coming home anymore. My brother and I went back and forth between houses. So I kind of lived the custody arrangements that are, at least in Texas, they think is appropriate. I have a whole different issue on the 30 days in the summer, but that's for another discussion. Yeah. My dad was an alcoholic. My stepmother was an alcoholic. It was an abusive household, and we witnessed things that no children should have to witness. That being said, it kind of drove me, at least in my career, to want to ensure that in even all my cases, even though I represent either mom or dad, that the decisions that my clients make are kid-centered. I will not continue representing a client ever if their positions are not centered around their children. Their children did not ask to be brought into a marriage of chaos, and they deserve the best opportunity to not have that chaos. And so that's kind of one of my hard stances in at least my particular practice, is the children and the decisions that the parents make need to be centered around what's best for their kids. May not be the perfect ideal situation for them, but at the end of the day, they'll get over it, they'll survive, but those children are left with permanent marks. I wanted to become a lawyer at age 8. Mm-hmm. My dad told me that he was a doctor and told me that if I became a lawyer, he would disown me. I was like, done, easy out. And so I never really deviated from that. I wanted to be a lawyer as long as I can remember. And then really from that was age 8. And then age 9, I decided I want to be a judge as well. You know, I had a green card up until I was 19 or 20 because my parents immigrated from Canada. And I really believed in like the system of American justice. Like I really grew up with the American system is great. And I also figured out that that was the way to most affect children, was to be in a position to make those decisions that made the right calls for them. And one of the reasons why I left the bench full time, because the court I managed was a domestic violence court. We handled 90% of the protective orders in El Paso County, and then all the family law cases that arose from it. And so it was the ugly of the ugly. Mm-hmm. And that's actually one of the reasons why I left the bench, because I just got really tired of all the ugly. Because while family law is difficult in and of itself, you add in the additional layer of stalking, abuse, child abuse. I also handled the CPS court as well. you really get a slanted viewpoint of society, and that makes it difficult.
Mhm.
So that's kind of my journey to where I got to today. So that's why I left the bench and came back to cross-examination, because Lord have mercy, there is nothing better after a day of court of just a good cross where you know that you just nailed it. I mean, it's a high that you can't get anywhere else. And yes, that makes me a giant nerd, and I'm okay with that.
I am with you on that. I have come to realize that I just need to embrace the fact that I'm a litigator at heart, that I love doing I always joke with clients, discovery is out there, so there should be no gotchas. And yet, time after time, we just simply get them because.
I really wish clients would understand, just tell me all. I can figure out a way around it if you would tell me. But if we're in the middle of a court hearing and something pops up that you didn't tell me about, we're going to have a problem.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I find it interesting that you talked about that if your clients won't stay child focused, that you get out of their cases or don't continue to represent them. And I feel like we're very similar in that matter. We will obviously have the trials, have the fights, but at the end of the day, we also try to get our clients to understand that settlement and what the courts are likely to do and how, it's in the best interest of their children to do things as well, which is, to us, it seems to be a minority standpoint. Where a lot of law firms seem to focus on we'll just do whatever our clients say and rack up those bills.
Well, it's their decision. It's not mine,
Yeah.
I love that they hide behind it's my client's decision. Well, one of I think our duties, because we are attorneys and counselors at law, is to counsel our clients on what is the right thing to do, with the lens of what is right for the children. But there are good lawyers, there are bad lawyers, there are good doctors, there are bad doctors, there are great presidents, there are bad presidents. There's good and bad in every profession. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to let the ones that I know that are like that, and there are a bunch, they're not going to change who I am, and they're not going to change how I practice, no matter how difficult they make my cases. What I tell my clients always is your case and how your case will go forward depends on a lot on who opposing counsel is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, we've had that conversation so many times here. Someone will come to me and I'm like, I am sorry, your case is going to be twice as long, twice as nasty, and cost 4 times as much, and there's nothing I can do about that.
Correct. And it's and it is. I always go back and like, remember when I told you that how your case would depend on who was hired? Yeah. Well, this is the worst option of who could have been hired. That's always when we don't know who opposing counsel is when we file first. And then I go back with, well, remember when I told you in the beginning, you asked all these questions? Well, we got the worst one, or one of the worst ones.
And it's so funny because it has nothing to do with skill, and it's everything about just like demeanor and approach.
It has zero to do with skill. Oh, and even better, zero to do with knowledge of the law.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. It actually seems to be like a scale, right? The less knowledge of the law, the more expensive and awful the case becomes.
And the more the attorney thinks they know the law. Like you know, okay, that is not what the statute said. That is not what the rule says. Oh, yes, it is. And will fight you tooth and nail, even when you present them with the law.
Here's the law. My personal favorite, and I've had this happen several times, is they cite the federal statutes in our family law case in the state of Texas. And I said, well, when you want to quote me the law as it applies to the state of Texas, not federal cases, then I'm more than happy to have a discussion with you. But I can't tell you how many times I've gotten the federal rules cited with me. I'm like, guys, we're in Texas and we're state court. It's family law. Try again. But yeah, there seems to be an exponential, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know the law, and how obstructive and difficult they are, and how long a case lasts. I mean, it's just the really good ones. And I love having them as opposing counsel, and I love having them in trial because it makes trial go so smoother. I mean, there are cases where, you know what, you're going to have a trial. And I've got some attorney on the opposing side where I'm like, well, thank God it's them, because we'll try it. We'll try it correctly. There'll be no reversible error, and we'll get it done at a reasonable cost for litigants. We're still going to do our job. It's still going to be expensive, but it's a much more, I think, pleasurable experience, as much as being in court can be pleasurable.
Yeah, I had 2 of those experiences back to back, like trials, I think a week and a half apart. And one was just unnecessarily nasty and difficult, and everything was a fight that didn't need to be. And then the next week, we still disagreed. Our client still felt just as strongly, but it was just so pleasant and collegial and professional. Went up and thanked the other attorney afterwards.
Listen, I had a jury trial where opposing counsel and I went back and talked to the jury afterwards. And the first thing the jury said was, we can't tell y'all how much we appreciate how you guys got along. Like, that was just the nicest, like, you guys were so professional and friendly and helped each other out, but still represented your clients to the best of your ability. And the jury noticed. And and he and I were, I think the judge thought we were too friendly. But we tried a professional case and we did our jobs and we did our jobs well. And the jury's noticed. And that, to me, helps dispel the negative viewpoint that sometimes attorneys get in the media and just the general perception of the public. But those 12 people got to see really good attorneys doing a really good job and being professional about it, not nasty. And so at least those 12 people have a different viewpoint of lawyers.
Yeah. So you mentioned jury trials. Does Texas do family law jury trials?
Oh, welcome to Texas. Texas is the only state left that allows jury trials in family law matters.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Can any family law matter have a jury trial, just like your average custody, or is there some?
Yeah. So our code establishes what areas that the jury has the right to determine, and at least so there's certain issues in divorce that a jury can decide, and there's certain issues in the child custody matters. So the jury gets to decide conservatorship and geo restriction. So in Texas, we have joint conservatorship or sole managing conservatorship, and then either a geo restriction or not, and the jury gets to decide those issues. The problem with that is the judge gets to decide everything else. And so if you have a judge that for a reason disagrees with whatever the jury verdict was, can make possession or access so insurmountably difficult that it negates what the jury did. So there's so many levels to it in Texas. But yeah, no, Texas allows jury trials. Only state left.
Wow. And it was one of the reasons why Kat was interested in speaking with you, because there are some similarities in law between Maryland and Texas, but there was one thing you found interesting.
I have a case that crossed state bounds, and I found it interesting that there's a termination of parental rights in Texas, because in Maryland, that doesn't happen unless it's a SINA case, so the parents are deemed unfit and they go into the system, or somebody wants to adopt the child, like a step parent, and the biological parent is letting go of the child.
And SINA means child in need of assistance. So there's only certain ways, like Kat said, that you can terminate parental rights. And if you terminate parental rights, both parents' rights are terminated. One parent can't be terminated.
Not in Texas.
Unless it's a step parent adoption. Unless it's a step parent adoption.
Yeah, there's no de-parenting a child without like putting another parent in the place.
In Texas, you can de-parent.
That's great. So what would be like the basis of it, or what's the?
We actually have a whole statutory framework around termination. In CPS cases, you can terminate a dad, but not terminate a mom. They're entitled to jury trials, and so on termination cases, and so they have court-appointed attorneys in those cases, and there's a whole framework around it. I have done terminations in my own private practice as it relates to, particularly in grandparents. I have grandparents will come in and be the sole managing conservator. They're the one parent, biological parent will remain, but like typically it's the dad that gets terminated. So you'll have the grandparents as either the joint managing conservator with the primary right, or sole managing, and their daughter usually will be the possessory conservator, or the joint managing conservator without the primary right. So no, Texas is in some ways a wild west still. But yeah, no, terminations happen all the time. I have a case now where we're going to terminate dad, and he's voluntarily agreeing to terminate his rights to his daughter. Now, understand, I believe that we could terminate his rights under the statutory framework because he's failed to support. There's he's been convicted of a felony. So we have, a whole bunch of grounds that give the right to terminate rights.
So does that also terminate like any future inheritance that the child could have? Like, is it a complete and utter, like, dad's not.
So I don't know that I know the answer to that. So let me tell you the one thing I do know. Like, we do adult adoptions.
Mhm.
My stepdad adopted me as an adult, and it terminated my dad's rights. That being said, it did not terminate my right to inherit under his estate. And I remember that specifically from when that occurred, but I can't tell you how it happens with relations to terminations. I know it does not, even if you terminate, if there's a back due child support amount, that still remains owed. Like, that doesn't get wiped away because you terminate.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, Maryland
Yeah.
is sort of similar in the back to child support. Like that
Right.
that can still be collected upon termination, but
No future child support is owed then.
yeah, no future child support,
Yeah, no.
and you don't inherit anymore, which is I think why Maryland has chosen more to stay with you can't terminate, because what if they win the lottery, or what if they die and they have a lot of money? Then we want this child to have it. So
Yeah, I'd like to say I'd like to say I know the answer to everything, but I don't. That one I don't know.
Well, and that's one part. It's like you get to a point in your career early on. I felt like I had to know everything, and like I was not good at my job if I didn't know everything. It's like the older I get and the more comfortable I get, very comfortable. And like, I haven't heard that before. No idea.
I am I hit 45 and 47 now, and I hit 45, and there was like a flip that switched where I am totally okay saying no. I'm totally okay saying you can go find someone else if you don't like my advice. There are so many things that I'm totally okay with now that I don't know that 10 years ago I would have been. And some of it's through trial and error, just getting, the wrong results. But also there's a point in time where you learn that enough's enough. And I work too hard. I've sacrificed too much to have clients that make my blood pressure rise when I see their phone call. I'm just not doing it anymore.
And that point leads into a nice segue of what advice would you give, young first women who want to become attorneys, or just young attorneys in general, or anybody in the legal profession, if they wanted to become judges or something? What advice do you have for them?
That's always a really good one. The first thing I'll tell them is be humble and leave your ego at the door. If you listen to the attorneys that tell you they've never lost, they either have a personality disorder or they're lying. One of the two. Let's be real clear on that. You're gonna lose. You learn more by your losses and your wins. And you don't know shit, excuse me, as a year 1 through 5, you just don't. That learning curve is huge. Find mentors, find people that are willing to kind of take you under their wing, because the older dogs, and I can't believe now I'm an older dog. Like, people come to me for advice. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, when did this happen? But listen to those that have done it. They're gonna steer you right. And the really number one thing to always remember is it takes a lifetime to build a career and a second to ruin it. And no single client is worth your reputation. None. Do not compromise who you are. There will always be another client. There will always be another case. You stay true to yourself and your beliefs. That way you can lay your head down on your pillow and sleep really well at night.
Yeah, that's so true. Law school really doesn't prepare you on how to practice law, how to be an attorney.
Law school doesn't do anything other than teach you to think a little bit differently and how to pass the bar exam. It doesn't teach you, like, and there's law schools in Texas, like Baylor prides himself on their trial advocacy clinic. Good for them. They've turned out some amazing attorneys. But it doesn't teach you the realities of when you have a crazy judge, when you have a judge that doesn't know the law, or when you have a judge that just doesn't care what the law is and going to do what they want to on that given day. So you can have all the trial advocacy practice you want in for years, but until you step into that courtroom and figure out that, oh crap, I'm going to have to pivot and go a completely different line of questioning. I mean, I've had judges shut me down and say, Miss Locke, do you think for a second that line of questioning is going to work? Okay, judge, I'll move on. And you just have to pivot. And there's no amount of scripting or writing the questions down that's going to help you do that pivot unless you are good on your feet. And law school doesn't teach that. You're either going to be a good litigator or you're not. And you need to know what your skill set is and hone that skill set. If you're not good on your feet, then find another practice of law. It's okay. You don't have to be a litigator to be considered a great lawyer. I mean, the problem is litigators, I think we get egos. Well, I can go in a courtroom and do blah, blah, blah. Everyone's for good in their own ways. Like mergers and acquisitions attorneys, God bless them. I could not do that for a living. And there are some exceptional ones that do it, and it doesn't make anyone less or better. I mean, we all serve different roles in life. And so find the role that makes you happy, because we only get one shot at this. At the end of the day, we look back at our life and we were miserable in our career. What was the point? So find your happiness. And if it's not in a courtroom, then don't be in a courtroom. If it's in a library researching every day, writing briefs, then go do that. But find your happiness.
Right. And I think as women in such a male-dominated field, we need to know, like, just be strong, be self-confident, and know how that we are good. We know the law, and we have to assert ourselves in order to get ahead. So in particular with women, what advice would you give them concerning the legal profession?
I remember at 15 years old, I had a very successful male attorney, still successful to this day, tell me, because he knew I wanted to go to law school. And he told me this. He said, never forget you're a woman. He said, do not try to be a man in a man's world. You own who you are. And I have embraced that every day of my career. You will see I have red lipstick on. I wear my power red, and I embrace my femininity. My ex-husband was a prosecutor for 30 years. And so he and I have two very different styles. I can't do his style because he's a man, and that's okay. My style, he can't do because he's a man. And embrace who you are. And this really applies to younger attorneys. As women, I think most of us we're catty and silly and stupid when we're younger. We don't embrace female power and embrace the collective female power as we should when we're younger. And I wish younger attorneys realize that. It's not about what she has or what she does. It's about that power coming together to help each one stand on each one's shoulders, and so that no one's left behind. Because when we embrace our own power, and you can go to my blog, I write about, I have an ode to red lipstick. I mean, embrace who you are, embrace your femininity. And that is where you find your power. That's where you find your voice. And that's where you find your strength, your ability to say no, your ability to create boundaries, your ability to say no to that client that wants you to do something that you question morally. But you have to, and that's to women in particular, own your femininity, own who you are. And it doesn't matter if your opponent is male. It doesn't. They're no different. And don't try to be them. Be yourself, because that is a much more effective tool. I've got 3 male partners. I love them. They are amazing attorneys. I could never be them in a courtroom. And that's okay. I don't need to be them. Can I learn? And I learned from some of their tactics or styles or ways to question?
Right.
Yes. But do I adopt it into my own style? Yes. Because I can't beat them. Be yourself, love yourself, respect yourself. And remember, at the end of the day, you are a badass woman that can go forward.
Yes.
Sorry, guys, I'm really blunt, which is I'm in the courtroom. I don't
No,
You may have to do some edits with the bad words. Sorry.
No. I see that. I teach mock trial to the local high school, and we do competitions, and I say that a lot to them. They're like, don't be what you think an attorney should be, because then it doesn't look real. It doesn't come off well. You have to, figure out how you do it yourself and be that personality.
Yeah. And I had a mock trial judge when I was in high school tell me that, because, I had a coach, he was a male attorney coach, and say, oh, you need to be more aggressive and do all this. And so I tried that, and it wasn't natural, and it came across. And so I was like, you know what? And so I learned, I'm going to stay in my lane, be who I am, because it will come across as me being confident and me knowing what I'm talking about, and me just feeling comfortable so that I can navigate the courtroom and get what I need to get done. So I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I tell our staff and interns, never apologize for who you are.
Yeah.
Be you. you don't have to say, oh, well, I get so emotional. We're human beings. We are emotional. So if you get emotional, you take that time to yourself in your office. Don't apologize for it. Be who you are. So
It's okay to go behind your door and cry. I know I've done it
exactly.
plenty of times in my career and don't have any intentions of stopping that, because every person, especially women in particular, we release our anger, our frustrations in ways that men don't. When I get really angry, I cry because that's the way my body releases it. So will I go behind the closed door? Yeah. But I mean, the problem is when I come out, you can tell I've been crying. You can tell I'm angry. But yeah, I mean, it's everyone. We would be so much better off, I think, in life in general, if people just were who they were and stopped trying to be everyone else and was okay with everyone else being themselves. Get along so much better in this world.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the blog. So before we move on to our next segment, please let us know like your blog, your website, social media handle.
Oh, I'm easy. It's Instagram is attorney Michele Locke. Attorney Michele Locke. The only thing I tell everyone is my mother's, because we're French Canadian, spelled my name with one L, not two. So Michelle's with one L. Instagram, or I'm sorry, LinkedIn is Michele Locke. And then I have my own website, which is michelelocke.com. And I have a newsletter. I do blogs. I mean, it's very much about being your authentic self. And then gives advice to young attorneys and the power of the red lipstick. I mean, red lipstick, it's like I have it here. I'm not kidding you. It's my battle armor. It goes with me everywhere. And I have like 18 different shades of some blue red. I mean, anyways, but yeah. So always be you. And for me, it's my red lipstick.
Awesome. Well, one of the things I like to do is play games. So let's move on to recess. Complaining about my segues.
Hard left. All right.
That's all right. We pivot. Remember,
Alycia,
we
move it
pivot.
over.
That's all we do.
Okay. See, I moved it over. Somebody's going to have to read it now because I can't see.
It's cheaper to keep them.
Oh, that's a good one for.
For a divorce attorney, that's a great one because
Yeah.
that happens a lot.
Okay. So today's.
So, sorry, go ahead.
So explain.
Yeah, so I'm going to read a couple different high-profile divorces, and then we have to guess whether the settlement was higher or lower than the amount listed. All right. So the first, when baseball player Alex Rodriguez divorced his wife, Cynthia Skirtis, in 2008, she received higher or lower than $40 million in the divorce settlement. Isn't A-Rod worth a ton of money?
I feel like it was.
I'm going to say she got higher.
That's what I feel like.
Because I think there was some adultery, if I recall. I may be wrong, but I think she got higher.
And I'll say lower, just to be opposite.
I was thinking higher. Yeah,
All right.
I feel like A-Rod's worth more. So what is it?
Lower, she had 26 million.
26
Lower.
Really?
26 million. Man.
I wonder what the prenup says, because that would be it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Actor Michael Douglas paid his wife higher or lower than $15 million when they got divorced in 1995.
1995, 15. I'm going to say higher.
Yeah.
He was at his prime.
Yeah.
I'm going to go higher too. And that's when he met Catherine Zeta-Jones
Yeah, I was
too.
going to say, did they?
The timing, I think,
together?
coincides. Yeah.
All right. I'll go higher too.
I'll go lower just to be different.
Higher, 45 million.
45
million.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know, he had a prenup after that.
Yeah, no, he did. Both he and Catherine did, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. Reba McEntire had to pay her husband higher or lower than $33.5 million in their divorce settlement.
Do we know the year?
Mm-mm.
I'm hoping lower because it just seems like, why should she pay him?
What? And I'm just thinking, sort of off topic, but I'm wondering if that's the husband whose son was married to Kelly Clarkson. And like had their whole, it might be, I mean, I don't know if it's the same husband. I don't know how many
Right.
times Reba's been married, but
Yeah.
God, I love family law. It was like the tangled webs we weave. You
Oh,
can't make
yes.
look.
Oh,
There's no fiction that's this good. I'm gonna say higher.
I'll say higher.
yeah, she's pretty fun. She had the TV show too.
I loved Reba.
Yeah.
It was a good show.
All right, I'll go lower just because I want that for her.
I would want her for it too, but I'm like, meh.
47.5 million.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Higher.
Yeah.
Wow.
She's
Yeah.
worth a lot then, more than I realized.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I think weren't they married forever? If it's like the main husband, like she was married for a very long time.
That's true.
Yeah. So she's probably still okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure she
And gets a ton of residuals, so she's fine.
Yes.
So one of the last things we do on our podcast is we talk about childhood traumas. Usually we read one off of Reddit, but we were hoping that you could share some sort of childhood trauma that you have dealt with in court or
Now-
outside of court.
Now, do you mean like how my childhood trauma affected, or just seeing childhood trauma in court?
Childhood trauma.
Oh,
So
my
just
God,
like something
I've seen-
frustrating or embarrassing or what have you that happened to you in court.
I passed out on the bench and had to be taken out by EMS.
Oh my gosh.
That would be a trauma.
That was a trauma. I
Oh.
was, I won't never forget this. I was sitting on the bench. So I don't, as a general rule, I don't drink caffeine. And that particular day and I'll never forget, 3 Diet Cokes. And I was sitting on the bench presiding over a hearing, protective order hearing, and all of a sudden I could taste iron in my mouth and set in a panic attack. And then as I was trying to I called a recess and I was trying to get off the bench, I collapsed. Next thing I remember, my bailiff is going with me in the ambulance to the hospital. So that's one. Then I have another, but then I have one that's better than that.
Oh, better.
Better. This one's least humorous.
Okay.
So I've got 3 boys. They're 20, I'm sorry, one's 21, 18, and then my little one is 9.
Oh my
And so I had him when I was 38, and I was on the bench, and I pulled into the judge's parking at the particular time was in a particular area, and I was 6 weeks pregnant. No one really knew I was pregnant yet. And I was in the judge's parking garage, literally head out the car door, just barfing everywhere. Just morning sickness. You can't help when it comes, right?
Yep.
And so this male judge was like, maybe you should go home and not come into work today. And I was like, nah, I'm pregnant. This too shall pass. It gets worse. So I went back on the bench, and while I was on the bench, morning sickness would hit. So I would literally have to run off the bench, call a recess, run off the bench, go and throw up. And where I was in the courthouse, you could literally hear my retching the
Oh.
entire floor. So yeah, that's one of my fun moments from being in court.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Oh my.
So does that work for you guys? That work?
Yes.
So when I say that women do it all, it didn't stop me. I got right back on the bench and finished the hearing. That's what we do.
That's what we do. Yes.
There were definitely a couple times with my final pregnancy that my third kid that I would be in the middle of questioning and be like, Judge, you got to take a comfort break. Just run.
And you can't help it. It's just like Mother Nature. And I had with my first 2, I think because I was 26 and 28, I had no morning sickness. So I swore this one was a girl because I threw up for 6 weeks. No, it was not a boy, which is fine. I'm clearly a boy mom. But yeah, it was bad. And then I had a nosebleed my last jury trial. It was a 2-week jury trial. We had 9 experts. And it went every bit of 2 weeks. And I was in the middle of cross-examining and my nose started bleeding. And so I turned to my paralegal. I'm like, Juan, I need some Kleenex. And so I'm literally plugged my nose and I continue with the cross-examination. I didn't even stop. And the jury at the end of it, when we always get to talk to the jury afterwards. They're like, man, it was impressive. You got a nose, didn't even stop. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. That's impressive. My doctor may disagree with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so sorry, my dog's made an appearance.
Aw.
But those are some of my tales from the courtroom.
Well, we love it. We appreciate that you shared, and we're so thankful that you came on the show with us.
Thank you guys for having this little old girl from Texas. I appreciate it. I love Maryland. My ex-husband was born and raised in PG County.
Okay.
So we have some Maryland ties. But yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been really a fun morning.
Yes. Well, thank you all for tuning into this episode of All the Legal Ladies. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and also Michele Locke. If you are watching us on YouTube, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and listen to the audio on your favorite digital streaming platform. And we will see you all next week. Thank you.